cheating sensor codes, 6-day repair waits during harvest season, and an $8,000 bill for a job that took 3 minutes of actual labor. Jared Wilson, a fifth-generation wheat farmer outside Liberal, Kansas, had run John Deere equipment his entire adult life, just like his father and grandfather before him. The bright green tractors were a family tradition, almost a religion in his county. But in the fall of 2022, a single wet sensor wire on his $900,000 combine turned him into one of the loudest defectors in modern American agriculture. And his story explains exactly why John Deere just agreed to pay $99 million to settle a lawsuit it spent years insisting was baseless. Before we get into Jared's story, if you care about American farming, corporate accountability, or just love watching a giant get its comeuppance, hit that subscribe button real quick. We dig into stories like this one every single week, the kind of stories the agricultural press won't touch, because John Deere buys half their ad space. Subscribed? Good. Now let's go back to that wheat field in Kansas. The morning everything fell apart, Jared was running his John Deere S780 combined through 600 acres of hard red winter wheat. The harvest window was tight that year, with the storm system tracking in from Colorado that would dump enough rain to flatten standing wheat and cost him roughly $80,000 in damaged crop. He had maybe 48 hours to get it all in. Then his combine threw an error code he had never seen before and shut itself down. The header stopped feeding. The engine idled, then died. Jared climbed down into the field, opened the access panel, and found exactly what was wrong within 90 seconds. A small sensor on the engine wiring harness had taken on moisture from the morning dew and shorted out. The wire was not even damaged. It just needed to be wiped off and reconnected. He did it. He climbed back into the cab. The combine refused to start. That refusal is the entire story of what's been happening to American farmers for the last decade. Modern John Deere equipment runs on something called the Service Advisor software, which controls every diagnostic function on the machine. Reset an error code? You need it. Clear a fault state? You need it. Calibrate a sensor that's been disconnected and reconnected, even by you, the legal owner of the machine? You need it. And Service Advisor is locked behind dealer authorization, hardware encryption, and a licensing agreement that John Deere has spent 20 years defending in court. The justification has always been Section 1201 of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, a piece of 1998 internet legislation that John Deere's lawyers retrofitted into a justification for treating tractors like copyrighted software platforms instead of physical machines that farmers bought and paid for. So Jared did what every John Deere owner has been forced to do for years. The nearest authorized service center was 87 miles away in Garden City, and they told him the soonest a service truck could come out was 6 days. 6 days, with a storm coming, with 600 acres of standing wheat. Jared offered to drive the combine in himself if they'd just unlock it remotely. They told him that wasn't a service they provided. He asked if he could buy the software outright and run the reset himself. They told him that wasn't possible. Then they gave him the estimated invoice for the eventual service call, $8,000, for wiping moisture off a sensor. He lost most of the crop. The storm hit on day 3 and flattened roughly 380 acres of wheat into the mud. The dealer truck arrived on day 6. The technician plugged a laptop into the diagnostic port, ran Service Advisor for about 4 minutes, and reset the error state. The actual repair took less time than it takes to make a cup of coffee. The bill, with travel, labor, software access fee, and dealer markup, came to $8,247. That bill is where Jared's story stops being about one farmer and starts being about a national betrayal. Because Jared isn't an outlier, he's the rule. Roughly 60% of all large tractors and combines sold in North America carry the John Deere name. The company controls the agricultural equipment market the way Boeing controls commercial aviation. And according to the U.S. Public Interest Research Group, repair restrictions across all major manufacturers are costing American farmers an estimated $4.2 billion every year in inflated repair costs and crop losses from equipment downtime. That number is larger than the entire annual revenue of some Fortune 500 companies. It's a quiet tax on rural America, paid one stalled combine at a time. Then it got darker. According to Deere's own SEC filings, the company makes 3 to 6 times more profit from parts and repair services than from selling new equipment. Let me say that again because it's the part that finally broke something in Jared. The actual machines are not where John Deere makes its real money. The lock-in is. The repair monopoly is. Every farmer waiting 6 days for a sensor reset is feeding a business model that depends on him being unable to fix his own equipment. That's not a side effect of digital innovation. That's the design. Sitting at his kitchen table the night the combine bill arrived, Jared started doing what farmers do when they're angry and have time on their hands. He started researching. He found a 2022 antitrust lawsuit called Forest River Farms versus Deere and Company, filed in Chicago by a North Dakota farmer who had been through the exact same thing. He found a public interest research group report that compared the service advisor software John Deere gave to dealers against the watered-down customer version the company released after pressure from the American Farm Bureau Federation. The customer version, according to the public interest research group's analysis, was so heavily redacted and obfuscated that it could not actually complete most repairs. It was theater. He found stories of Iowa farmers buying cracked versions of Service Advisor from Ukrainian technicians on encrypted Telegram channels, paying a few $100s for software that gave them the same control John Deere was charging $8,000 to access. And he found Trinity Dale Wells, an Alabama cattle farmer whose tractor sensor had also gotten wet, also locked the machine into limp mode and also cost a fortune to fix. By 2 a.m, Jared had a tab open for Kubota. This is where the Kubota story enters, and it is worth understanding what Kubota actually represents in the American farm equipment market. Kubota is a Japanese company that built its U.S. reputation on smaller compact tractors, the kind hobby farmers and ranchers use to mow pastures and move hay bales. For years, the conventional wisdom was that you bought a Kubota for under 100 horsepower work, and a John Deere or a Case for serious row crop farming. Kubota did not really compete at the high end. They did not build a $900,000 combine, but what they did build, every single one of them, was equipment that you could actually repair without a software license. Their dealers had a reputation for treating farmers like customers instead of subscribers. Their parts were available without authorization codes. Their machines, while less feature-rich on the precision agriculture side, would start when you turned the key, even after a repair. So Jared made a calculation that thousands of American farmers have been making over the last 3 years. He totaled up what the Deere lock-in had cost him over the previous decade, the repair bills, the downtime, the dealer trips, the lost crop in 2022. He compared it against what scaling down to Kubota equipment would actually mean for his operation. The honest answer was that he would lose some of the autonomous steering precision he was used to. He would lose some of the data integration with his grain marketing software. He would give up some horsepower per dollar, but he would own his equipment again in the actual legal sense of the word. He would be able to fix what he bought. That spring, he sold the combine. He sold his Deere tractors. He bought a fleet of Kubota M-Series tractors and contracted out his combining to a neighbor who was still running orange equipment from a different brand. His operation got slightly smaller, and his break even per acre got slightly tighter. But on the dashboard of every machine he now owns, he can plug in a basic diagnostic tool, read every error code himself, reset the system, and keep working. The math came out in his favor in the first year, and it has been widening ever since. His story would just be one farmer's choice, except that it isn't. Across the Corn Belt, across the Wheat Belt, across the Mississippi Delta and the Central Valley, the same conversation has been happening at kitchen tables and equipment auctions. According to industry analysts tracking used equipment markets, the rate of farmers actively switching brands away from John Deere has roughly doubled since 2022. Kubota's North American sales of larger class tractors have grown substantially over the same period. CNH Industrial, which makes Case IH and New Holland equipment, has seen similar gains. The signature green tractors that used to be a status symbol in rural America have, in pockets of the country, become a symbol of something else, of having been taken, and the courts were paying attention. The Forest River Farms case grew. More plaintiffs joined. The Federal Trade Commission under the Biden administration opened its own investigation. In January 2025, the FTC formally sued John Deere, accusing the company of, in the FTC's own language, unfair practices that drove up repair costs for farmers while depriving them of the ability to make timely repairs. Deere called the claims baseless. The American Farm Bureau Federation had already brokered a memorandum of understanding with Deere that the company pointed to as proof of good faith. But farmers and advocates kept pointing out the same problem. The MOU was voluntary. It had no enforcement mechanism. The customer-facing software it promised farmers was, in PIRG's analysis, deliberately hobbled. It was the kind of solution that exists to forestall a real solution. And by 2025, the courts were running out of patience. The settlement came in the summer of 2025 and was finalized in April 2026. John Deere agreed to pay $99 million into a fund that would compensate farmers for inflated repair costs going back to 2018. Some farmers will recover more than half of what they were overcharged. But the bigger piece of the settlement, the part that matters for the next decade, is the legal commitment Deere made to provide actual diagnostic software, repair manuals, and authorization tools to independent repair shops and individual farmers for at least 10 years. The kind of access Jared Wilson asked for on a Tuesday morning in October 2022 and was told did not exist. That access now exists, legally and enforceable in federal court. The settlement included no admission of wrongdoing, which is standard corporate practice. But the response from the right to repair community was telling. PIRG called the $99 million a relatively minor financial penalty for years of monopoly behavior, pointing out that the farmers' losses were in the billions. The settlement, in other words, was a victory, but not a knockout. The deeper fight, the FTC case, is still pending, and state legislatures from Colorado to New York are now moving right to repair bills that would go significantly further than the federal settlement, requiring full software access, banning future lockout mechanisms, and applying the same logic to every industry that has copied John Deere's playbook, from smartphones to medical devices to coffee machines. Which brings us back to liberal Kansas and to a farmer who has been watching all of this play out from the cab of an orange tractor. When the settlement news broke, a reporter from a Wichita television station drove out to interview Jared. They wanted to know if he was vindicated, if he would switch back to Deere now that the diagnostic tools were going to be available. Jared told them no, and his reasoning is worth listening to carefully because it explains why this is not just a story about tractors. He said he did not trust a company that had spent 20 years building a wall around equipment it had already sold him. He said the diagnostic access in the settlement was a legal concession, not a change of heart. He said the same engineers who designed Service Advisor were still in the same building working on the next generation of farm equipment, and he said he had no confidence that whatever those engineers built next would not include some new flavor of lock-in, just dressed up differently, just barely on the legal side of whatever memorandum of understanding came next. That's the part of Jared's story that hits hardest. The settlement gives farmers back something they should never have lost, but it doesn't restore the trust. And without trust, the green tractors that used to symbolize American agricultural pride now symbolize something more complicated. They symbolize a generation of farmers who learned the hard way that ownership in the modern industrial economy doesn't always mean what they thought it meant. That buying a $900,000 machine doesn't guarantee you the right to fix it. That the same fields their grandfathers worked with horse-drawn plows can be brought to a standstill by a single line of encrypted software. And that sometimes the only way to fight back is to walk into a Kubota dealership and trade green for orange. The agricultural industry is watching closely now. Every major manufacturer from CNH to AGCO to Claas signed a similar memorandum of understanding with the American Farm Bureau Federation back in 2023. Kubota itself was part of that coalition, which is worth flagging honestly. The right to repair fight is bigger than any single brand. The reason farmers like Jared switched isn't because Kubota is morally pure. It's because Kubota's equipment at the time he switched was more repairable in practice. Whether that remains true as Japanese manufacturers add more precision ag features and more electronic controls is an open question. The same software temptations that captured John Deere are sitting in front of every other manufacturer right now. And the only thing keeping them honest is the pressure from the courts, the regulators, and the farmers themselves. But farmers, it turns out, are paying attention. They're slower to switch than smartphone users. Their decisions involve millions of dollars in equipment and decades of brand loyalty. When they finally move, they move quietly and they don't come back. John Deere's executives understand this now in a way they probably didn't in 2022. The $99 million settlement in the company's internal calculus is almost certainly cheaper than the alternative would have been. But the brand damage is real. The customer defections are real. And the next generation of farmers, the ones taking over their family operations right now, has watched the entire saga play out in real time. They've seen their parents wait 6 days for a sensor reset. They've seen the bills. They know which color tractor was sitting in the field when the storm hit. The story isn't finished. The Federal Trade Commission lawsuit is still active. New state laws are being written. And somewhere outside liberal Kansas, on the same 600 acres where the wheat went down in 2022, a Kubota tractor that Jared Wilson actually owns, in every meaningful sense of the word, is preparing for another harvest. If you found this story worth your time, the subscribe button is right there, and the bell notification is right next to it. We have more stories like this one queued up. These are the kind of stories where the small operators finally get their day, even if it takes a decade and the federal class action to get there. Hit them both, and we will see you in the next investigation.